All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are talking about one of nature's most mind-blowing creations, a creature that really seems to break the rules of biology, the electric eel. But as you're about to find out, the real story is even more incredible than the legend. Let's just start with a number, 860 volts. That is the most powerful electrical shock ever recorded from an animal on this planet. Now, just to put that into perspective for you, your standard wall outlet is about 120 volts. This is more than 7 times that amount, coming from a living, breathing creature. And that, of course, leads to the big question, right? How on earth is that even possible? How did evolution create a biological power plant that can do something so extraordinary? Well, to get to the answer, we first have to sort of unlearn everything we think we know. Which brings us to our first major point. Because before we can even get to the electric part of the electric eel, we need to talk about the eel part. Yep, you heard that right. The first, and maybe biggest, secret about the electric eel is that its name is basically a lie. It's not an eel. Not even close. So let's break down the biology here. Real eels, they belong to a group called Anguilliformes. The electric eel, on the other hand, is part of a totally different order, Gymnotiformes, which are also known as the knifefish. In fact, if you look at its family tree, it's way more closely related to a catfish than it is to a moray eel. And the surprises just keep coming. For more than 200 years, scientists were pretty sure there was only one species of electric eel. But then, just recently, in 2019, new research came out and totally changed the game. It turns out there are actually 3 different species. And one of those newly identified species, Electrophorus voltai, is the one that holds the record for that insane 860-volt shock. Okay, so now that we know what this thing isn't, let's dive into how it actually works. How is its body even built to generate that much power? Let's talk about the hardware. This right here tells you everything you need to know about this animal's priorities. A wild 80% of its entire body is made up of its electric organs. Think about that. All the important stuff, the heart, stomach, liver, all of it is crammed into the front 20%. It's not so much a fish as it is a giant swimming battery with a head attached. So where does all this power come from? It all starts with these tiny, specialized cells called electrocytes. The easiest way to think of them is as little biological batteries. And what's amazing is that they're actually just modified muscle cells. But instead of contracting to make the animal move, their whole job is to generate a tiny bit of electricity. So how do you get from a tiny charge to 860 volts? Well, it's all about teamwork. Each individual electrocyte only produces a very small voltage. But when the eel wants to strike, its brain sends a signal that travels at the speed of thought. That signal tells thousands of ion channels to pop open, allowing sodium ions to rush in, which instantly flips the charge of each cell. And since these cells are stacked up, one after another in these long columns, just like when you stack batteries in a remote control, all those little voltages add up, combining into one single massive jolt. You know, having all that incredible hardware is one thing, but knowing how to use it, that's something else entirely. So now let's look at the software, the brilliant ways the eel uses its power with surgical precision. It's really amazing. The eel has 2 completely different electrical modes. First, it's constantly emitting this low voltage pulse, only about 10 volts. It uses this to create an electric field around its body, kind of like a biological radar, to feel its way through murky water and find prey. But then, when it's ready to attack, bam, it switches modes and unleashes that high-voltage blast from its other organs to stun its target or defend itself. And the ways it uses that power are just genius. It can send out a very specific pulse that literally hacks into a nearby fish's nervous system, forcing it to twitch and give away its hiding spot. It's like a remote control for its prey. Then, it can fire off rapid, high-voltage pulses to track the prey as it tries to escape. And to deliver the final blow, it often curls its body around the victim, which focuses the electric field and nearly doubles the power of the shock. And if that wasn't enough, it will actually leap out of the water to directly shock predators on the land. It's just unbelievable. So this creature's abilities weren't just a fascination for biologists. It turns out this fish had a direct hand in shaping the course of human technology. Let's take a look at its absolutely wild role in our own history. This timeline is just incredible. It really kicks off in 1775 when a scientist named John Hunter first described the eel's electric organs. Then, in 1800, the famous explorer Alexander von Humboldt wrote this dramatic story about eels fighting horses, and all of Europe became obsessed. And all of this research directly inspired a guy named Alessandro Volta. Yeah, that Volta, the guy who invented the battery. He literally based his design on the eel's stacked electrocyte cells. And finally, decades later, the great Michael Faraday sealed the deal, proving that the jolt from this fish was, in fact, the very same stuff as lightning. You can just feel the excitement in Faraday's own words back in 1839. He said, "The shock from one fish was like the power from 15 Leyden jars all put together." And Leyden jars were basically the most powerful electrical devices they had back then. It just shows you how much this one animal completely blew the minds of the greatest scientific pioneers. And that legacy is far from over. Even today, scientists are still learning from the electric eel. Right now, researchers are designing soft, flexible, artificial versions of its electrocytes. And the goal? To create tiny, biological power sources that could one day run things like pacemakers or other medical implants inside the human body. The eel's secrets are still pushing technology forward. So when you really think about it, this one creature, which we now know isn't even an eel, gave us the blueprint for the battery and is still inspiring the future of medicine. It just makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other incredible secrets are just hiding out there in nature waiting for us to discover them?